30,000 men defeated 150,000. A single night's cavalry charge shattered the world's most feared army. One prince's understanding of terror forced history's greatest conqueror to retreat. This isn't fantasy. This is what happened when Vlad the Impaler faced the Ottoman Empire at Târgoviște in 1462. Picture this: 7,000 horsemen charging into a camp of 150,000 Ottoman soldiers. The survival of Christian Europe hung in the balance that June night. By the end of this video, you'll understand how medieval warfare's greatest upset happened, why the conqueror of Constantinople fled from a minor prince, and what terrible price was paid for this impossible victory. I'll reveal 3 crucial secrets: the reconnaissance mission that made victory possible, the horrifying sight that broke an invincible army, and the personal connection between hunter and prey that changed everything. You might think 5-to-1 odds mean certain defeat. The Ottoman Empire had crushed kingdoms with far better chances. Their sultan, Mehmed II, had conquered the unconquerable Constantinople just 9 years earlier. His army of elite janissaries, massive cannons, and endless reinforcements had never met true defeat. Against them stood Vlad III of Wallachia, 30,000 farmers, minor nobles, and mercenaries defending a principality smaller than modern-day South Carolina. No one gave them a chance. But here's where it gets insane. Vlad had spent years as a hostage in the Ottoman court. He knew their routines, their language, their tactics. He understood something about his enemy that would prove more valuable than any army. What Mehmed didn't know was that he wasn't just invading a country. He was walking into a trap designed by someone who understood Ottoman thinking better than his own generals. To understand how this impossible victory happened, we need to go back to where the hatred began. If you're fascinated by the untold stories of history's most decisive battles, hit that like button and subscribe for more epic war content. Now, let me take you back to medieval Wallachia, where terror was about to become a weapon of war. The boy who would become Vlad the Impaler spent 4 years in Ottoman captivity. From age 11 to 15, he lived in Mehmed's court as a political hostage, insurance for his father's loyalty. While his younger brother Radu charmed their captors, Vlad watched. He memorized guard rotations, studied military protocols, learned perfect Turkish. Every humiliation, every beating, every moment of powerlessness became fuel for what was coming. 20 years later, that hostage education would save his kingdom. But first came the moment that made war inevitable. In 1459, Ottoman envoys arrived at Târgoviște, demanding 10,000 ducats in tribute and 500 boys for the Janissary Corps. Vlad invited them to feast. When they refused to remove their turbans, citing religious custom, Vlad smiled. "Then let me help ensure they never fall off." His soldiers nailed the turbans to the envoys' skulls. The screaming lasted hours. The message was clear: Wallachia would bow to no one. What Mehmed didn't know was that this brutality wasn't random cruelty. Vlad had learned in the Ottoman court that extreme actions created extreme reactions. Fear, properly applied, could multiply a small force into something terrifying. Mehmed II wasn't just any sultan. This was the man who achieved the impossible, conquering Constantinople in 1453. The 1,000-year Byzantine Empire fell to his cannons and strategies. Christian Europe trembled. At 29, he commanded the world's most disciplined army and had never lost a major campaign. To him, Wallachia was an annoying pebble in his shoe, nothing more. He would crush this upstart prince and continue his march toward Europe's heart. But that winter of 1461 to 1462, something disturbing happened. Ottoman border forces started disappearing. Entire patrols vanished. Then came reports that made seasoned commanders nervous. 23,884 Turks and their sympathizers had been killed in Wallachian raids, not estimated counted. Vlad kept exact records. Bodies were found in their beds, at their posts, in their strongholds. The Impaler struck everywhere, then melted away. Here's where the numbers become staggering. Wallachia was a buffer state between Ottoman expansion and the Kingdom of Hungary. Its entire population barely reached 500,000. The Ottomans controlled territories from Anatolia to the Balkans, commanding millions. In any logical world, this conflict should have lasted days, not months. But Vlad wasn't playing by logical rules. He was writing new ones, rules written in psychological warfare and calculated terror. He understood that Wallachia couldn't win through strength, but through fear, through turning the land itself hostile. That was possible. Then came the moment that changed everything. Mehmed decided to end this personally, but when spring came, Mehmed assembled an army unlike anything Wallachia had ever seen. The Ottoman force that crossed the Danube in May 1462 defied imagination. Conservative estimates place it at 100,000 men. Some sources claim 150,000, others up to 300,000. What we know for certain, 120 massive cannons rolled north, the same type that shattered Constantinople's legendary walls. The baggage train stretched for miles, siege engines, supply wagons, mobile workshops. This wasn't a raid or punishment expedition. This was total conquest. The Janissaries formed the Iron Corps. These elite infantry, taken as children and raised solely for war, knew no fear and gave no quarter. 20,000 of the Sultan's finest, backed by Sipahi cavalry, irregular troops, and allied forces. Mehmed himself rode at their head, bringing his royal guard and personal household troops. The conqueror of Constantinople would accept nothing less than complete victory. But here's where Vlad's Ottoman education paid off. He knew Janissary discipline depended on routine and order. Disrupt that, and even elite troops became vulnerable. Against this tide, Vlad commanded perhaps 30,000 men, local militia armed with whatever they could find. Boyar cavalry, minor nobles fighting for their lands, Hungarian and Moldavian mercenaries paid with promises, no cannons, no siege engines. Just desperation, local knowledge, and a commander who understood his enemy's psychology better than they understood themselves. But Vlad had learned something crucial during those hostage years. Large armies required massive supply lines. The Ottomans expected to live off conquered land, supplementing their supplies with local resources. So Vlad gave the order that would echo through history: burn everything. Granaries went up in flames. Wells were filled with corpses and filth. Cattle were driven into the mountains or slaughtered and left to rot. Every village in the Ottoman path became a ghost town. The earth itself turned hostile. This scorched earth wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. Vlad wanted the Ottomans hungry, thirsty, and increasingly nervous about what kind of enemy would destroy their own land rather than see it conquered. Then came the most diabolical part. Vlad had observed Ottoman camp hygiene during his captivity. He knew how disease spread in large armies, so he sent his own kind of soldiers into the Ottoman ranks, plague carriers. Sick peasants, dressed in Ottoman clothing, speaking perfect Turkish, slipped into the massive camp. They shared water, food, stories. Within days, dysentery and fever began their invisible assault. What the scouts reported back was impossible, yet true. The mighty Ottoman army was already suffering before the first real battle. But these were hardened veterans. They'd campaigned from Belgrade to Baghdad. A little hardship wouldn't stop them, or so Mehmed believed. The Sultan's response shocked everyone. Instead of slowing down, he pushed harder, forced marches through the devastated landscape. His message was clear: Wallachian resistance would be crushed through sheer momentum. But hidden in the darkness, Vlad's scouts watched every move. Former Ottoman hostages who spoke perfect Turkish counted tents, noted positions, memorized routines. This is where the story takes its darkest turn. Vlad knew he couldn't match Ottoman numbers, but he didn't need to. He just needed to get close enough for one perfect strike. The planning began for something that defied all military logic: a direct assault on a force 5 times larger. But first, he needed intelligence that could only come from one source. As Mehmed's massive army crossed the Danube, they entered a landscape transformed into hell itself. Day 1 in Wallachia taught the Ottomans what kind of war this would be. The advance guard found the first village empty, doors swinging in the wind. Granaries stood as blackened shells. The well water stank of death. On the Orthodox church door, a message in Turkish: "Welcome to our land, leave while you can." By day 3, the pattern held, every settlement abandoned, every resource destroyed. The mighty Ottoman war machine, accustomed to feeding itself through conquest, found only ash and absence. Soldiers began grumbling. Where were the inhabitants? Where was the resistance? Then night fell, and they learned. Arrows whistled from darkness, finding gaps in armor. Sentries vanished without sound. Horses screamed as hidden pit traps swallowed cavalry patrols whole. By dawn, dozens were dead or missing, but no enemy bodies remained. Just arrows, traps, and growing fear. The Wallachians struck and vanished like ghosts. But the worst was yet to come. The plague carriers had done their work too well. By the end of the first week, thousands of Ottoman soldiers clutched their stomachs in agony. Fever spread through the ranks. The medical corps, overwhelmed, couldn't determine the source. Was it bad water, spoiled rations, or something more sinister? Imagine riding into a camp of 150,000 enemies, knowing that disease and fear already worked in your favor. An Ottoman soldier, let's call him Yusuf, wrote in a recovered diary, "The land itself fights us. My brother fell to marsh fever yesterday, Ahmed to an arrow in the night. We see no enemy army, yet we die by the dozens. The Christians have made a deal with devils." Here's the detail that still shocks historians. Vlad's spy network included former Janissaries, Ottoman Christians who'd escaped service, and Wallachians who'd lived in Turkish territories. They moved through the Ottoman camp like shadows, noting everything: guard rotation times, password patterns, the location of supply dumps, most crucially, where Mehmed placed his command pavilion. These weren't random guerrilla attacks. Each strike had purpose. Hit the gunpowder wagons to create fear of explosions, kill the officers to disrupt chain of command, poison the horse feed to cripple cavalry. Vlad wasn't trying to defeat the Ottoman army through these tactics. He was preparing them for something unprecedented. Then Vlad did something no one expected. On June 14th, he sent an envoy to Mehmed. The message was simple: "Meet me in open battle at Târgoviște. Let us end this with honor." The Ottoman generals laughed. Did this fool really think his 30,000 peasants could face the Sultan's might in open combat? Mehmed saw through the ploy. Vlad wanted to lure them to ground of his choosing. But the Sultan was confident. Let the Impaler choose his grave. What happened next defied all military logic. As the Ottoman army camped on June 16th, just 2 days from Târgoviște, Vlad made a decision that would echo through military history. He couldn't wait for the Ottomans to reach his chosen battlefield. The guerrilla tactics had weakened them, but not enough. He needed something decisive, something that would use Ottoman strength against itself. The Ottomans were about to learn what happens when you teach warfare to your enemies. Vlad gathered his boyar cavalry, 7,000 horsemen who knew this was likely suicide. But their prince had a plan based on intelligence so detailed, so specific, that it might just work. You see, during his captivity, Vlad had learned something crucial about Ottoman night protocols. There was a fatal flaw in their camp security, one that only someone who'd lived among them would know. But Vlad wasn't finished with his preparations. He needed to see the camp himself, to verify what his spies reported. What he did next was either brilliance or madness, perhaps both. He would infiltrate the Ottoman camp personally. Think about the audacity. A prince marking himself for certain death if caught, walking among 150,000 enemies. The plan was insane. Strike at night with a fraction of their force, create enough chaos to break Ottoman morale, target supplies, officers, and most importantly, spread panic. But first, Vlad needed to map the camp with his own eyes. This is where those 4 years of captivity would pay their ultimate dividend. As darkness fell on June 16th, Vlad prepared to do the unthinkable. The moment of pure genius was about to unfold. On the night of June 16th, Vlad prepared to do the unthinkable. Vlad donned the clothes of a Turkish merchant. His perfect Ottoman Turkish, learned through years of captivity, would be his shield. 6 of his best scouts, All Ottoman-speaking Wallachians joined him. They approached the massive camp as traders seeking the army's supply masters. The guards barely glanced at their forged permits. Why would they? Who would be insane enough to walk into certain death? Inside, Vlad's trained eyes catalogued everything. The janissary sections, marked by their distinctive tall tents. The supply wagons, grouped by type gunpowder here, food there. The horse lines, the paths between tent clusters. But most crucially, he noted the grand pavilion at the camp's heart. Mehmed's war tent soared above the others, marked by 3 golden crescents. Guards stood at measured intervals. Vlad counted steps, memorized faces, noted when they changed shifts. Then came the discovery that changed everything. The Ottoman night password system followed a pattern. Each section had its own phrase, but they all shared a common response. More importantly, in the darkness and chaos of such a massive camp, sentries relied on language more than actual recognition. Speak Turkish like a native, know the response, and you could move almost freely. Almost. What Mehmed didn't know was that Vlad had just solved the puzzle of attacking a force 5 times his size. The Ottoman camp's greatest strength, its massive size, would become its weakness. In daylight, organization and numbers made them invincible, but in darkness, in chaos, that was different. Back in the Wallachian camp, Vlad gathered his 7,000 cavalry. These weren't just soldiers, they were men who'd lost family to Ottoman raids, whose lands faced conquest. The priest blessed them, knowing most wouldn't see dawn, but then Vlad revealed his intelligence. They wouldn't charge blindly, they'd follow specific paths, hit exact targets. Groups of 500 would strike different sectors simultaneously. The goal wasn't to fight 150,000 men, it was to make 150,000 men fight themselves. Midnight approached. No moon. Vlad had chosen this night specifically. The cavalrymen wrapped their horses' hooves in cloth, muffling the sound. They blackened their armor to kill reflection. Each group leader carried a sketch of their sector, drawn from Vlad's reconnaissance. Primary targets, officer tents, marked by pennants. Secondary, supply wagons. Tertiary, create maximum chaos. Here's where it gets insane. The attack began not with a charge, but with infiltration. Vlad's Turkish-speaking scouts slipped past the sentries, using the